All right, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Big Doug and Carmi Show, you one-stop shop for all things Commanders. It is an opposition Wednesday. Commanders play the Steelers this Sunday. Get us closer to the action from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette is Ray Fittipaldo. Ray, how are you?
Good, Big Doug. Glad to join you today.
How bad did I butcher your last name? I hope not terribly.
No, you did good. Fittipaldo is right on the money.
All right, very good. How long, Ray, have you been with the Post-Gazette now?
I've been with the Post-Gazette since 1997, and I've been covering the Steelers beat since 2012. So in my second decade here covering the Steelers.
It's interesting. For my money, at about the halfway point of the season, I've got our guy Dan Quinn, your guy Mike Tomlin, and Dan Campbell up in Detroit. What is it about Mike that they've been able to have such success while, like, it surprised me this is a two-loss football team, right? But you look at it year after year, and here we are. What is it about Tomlin that kind of has built this thing?
You know, he's been adaptable. Anytime you're in one place for 18 years, I think you got to be able to roll with the punches. And listen, Mike's been able to do that. You know, he's now working under a second-year GM in Omar Khan. He spent his first, decade and a half with Kevin Colbert in an entirely new or old scouting department. Now it's a bunch of different players or scouts finding the players for him. So, Mike's been really involved in picking these new players. They've turned over the roster a bunch in the last couple of years. They turned over their entire quarterback room over the offseason, got rid of 3 guys, brought in 3 new guys. I think you know that story. Russell Wilson and Justin Fields have been a big part of this, good start for the Steelers. And they've done the same thing at other position groups. They've rebuilt the offensive line. The entire inside linebacking core is new. Cole Holcomb is here. He's injured right now, but he was part of that rebuild. So they've kind of done a nice job of doing it on the fly. They're still contending. If you know anything about the Steelers, they might retool a little bit, but they're never going to tear it down and do a complete rebuild. So the fact that they're having this type of success this season while they're, tinkering with the roster, I think that's, a feather in Mike Tomlin's cap.
I mean, I'll let you tell me, but I would assume that the plan always was to see what was going on with Russell Wilson. He provides something that Justin just can't, certainly isn't prepared for yet. I kind of remember when Matthew Stafford was coming out of Georgia and they said, listen, but you got to take some of the zip off. Like, Justin Fields does a lot of things well, but controlling the speed of the ball is not one of them. Russell Wilson may be one of the best deep ball throwers in the league.
Yeah.
What has he meant to getting them back besides the obvious of scoring points? Because they're scoring a lot more points now.
They are. With Justin, it was a little bit more conservative. They were playing these 17-14 or 20-17 games where they were able to win really because of their defense and because Justin didn't turn the ball over. Justin is terrific with his legs. He can make plays with his legs. And he was really smart with the football, much like Jaden Daniels. Not a lot of turnovers this year. I think he had 10 touchdowns to 1 turnover, to 1 interception. I think 5 rushing touchdowns, 5 passing touchdowns in his 6 starts. So he was really good protecting the football. But what Russell Wilson gives them is just an accomplished pro quarterback, a guy who understands how to read defenses. And that's not a knock against Justin. It's just that Justin is only in his 4th year in his league. And I don't know that he had that type of training with all the coaching changes in Chicago to really sit back and understand how the NFL game is played. Russell Wilson has been around the block. He's been with Seattle. He's been with Denver. He understands the NFL game. And I think that's what you've seen the last 2 games against the Jets and the Giants. Russell Wilson throwing the ball downfield, giving his best playmakers opportunities to make plays. George Pickens is a factor now. Even guys like Van Jefferson are factors now, with Russell Wilson as the main quarterback.
People that watch this show know that I love two things: the Commanders and the Bulldogs. So George Pickens has to be one of the happier guys in that locker room with the emergence of a quarterback that will get him and feed him the ball. He's an interesting fella. When you've got him excited to play, he's one of the better playmakers in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. And your fans might be aware, they might not be aware that there was an issue early in the season with George not blocking. George taking plays off, and that didn't go over too well in that locker room or among the coaching staff. And his snaps were decreased for a game, I think, because of disciplinary reason. He just wasn't giving full effort out there. But now that he's engaged more, I think he knows too that Russell Wilson's going to get me the ball. He's going to put me in favorable situations, and I'm going to be able to put up numbers. So I don't care what city you're in. There's going to be receiver drama. You could play for any NFL franchise. There's always going to be those personalities. George is definitely one of those personalities, but we haven't seen that come out the last couple of weeks since he's been producing more.
Tell me about Broderick Jones. He's not quite had the career early on here that I thought he would coming out of Georgia. They've got him over on the right side. I saw your article about them wanting for him to learn faster. What is it that he's not getting?
He's one of these specimens who comes out of college. I think he's 6'5", 315, whatever his combine numbers were. He's out of central casting for an NFL offensive tackle. He just doesn't have the technique. He doesn't have, the fundamentals. If you go back to his days at Georgia, I think, what did he have? 17 starts, just the one full season as a starter for the Bulldogs. He's just not a refined technician. And, there's a big storyline in training camp this year. This year's number 20 overall pick, Troy Fautanu out of Washington, bumped him from his starting job. Troy Fautanu started twice as many games at Washington as Broderick did with the Bulldogs. So it's just, it's that senior coming out, 24 years old compared to Broderick, redshirt sophomore coming out.
We lost Ray. Let's see here. All right, got you back.
Yeah, so he's just, one of those things where redshirt sophomore, 21, 22 years old, compared to a guy who's 24 years old and started a bunch of games. He just has to play. He's got to learn on the job. It's been a rough season for him, but listen, they invested the number 14 overall pick in him. They're going to ride with him. He's got to work out his issues, but he's part of their future. He's got to figure it out here in the second half of the season.
What is the plan? What is for those of us that are following the Commanders? What is generally the plan on offense for the Steelers? I know they've got a couple of good tight ends, another Georgia Bulldog in Washington. That they get into that 12 personnel a bunch.
You were breaking up on me there a little bit, Doug. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I was just saying, for those of us that haven't followed the Steelers, they've got a couple of good tight ends, and they like to run the ball. Yeah. Another guy in Washington. Are they using that 12 personnel mostly?
Yeah, they're using Pat Freiermuth, who is their pass catching tight end. He's playing a bunch of snaps. And Darnell Washington, who's also from Georgia, is having a really nice season, not only as a blocker. I think most people from Georgia knew him as this extra offensive tackle who would be a factor in the run game. He's certainly been that for the Steelers, but they've gotten him involved in the passing game as well. So up until this last week, Arthur Smith was carrying 5 tight ends. He was carrying Michael Pruitt. He was also carrying Connor Hayward. He was also carrying Rodney Williams, who just got cut yesterday to make room for Mike Williams. So Arthur loves to use his tight ends. It's a big part of his personnel packages. We'll see what happens. They just acquired Mike Williams yesterday. I'm sure he's going to be a big part of things, sooner rather than later. But one thing that we know about Arthur Smith, he loves his tight ends, and I think there's 12 personnel only going to continue.
I saw yesterday that was an interesting move. They picked up Preston Smith from the Packers. The Packers are in contention. Ray, I saw that they picked up the Preston Smith from the Packers. Was interesting because Preston Smith that Packers team is in contention. Interesting to see them let them go. Steelers already have two of the better pass rushers in the league. Well, let's see. We'll get Ray back here. Sorry about this, folks.
Hey, Doug, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Let me try to go inside the building here and see if I could just do this standing up. You want to see if I can maybe get a better signal in there?
Yeah, that's fine.
Let me try that.
Okay, we got Ray back where I was asking you. The Steelers have two of the better edge rushers in the league, in my mind. They added Preston Smith that the Commanders fans are familiar with. It was interesting because the Packers are in contention. What were the Steelers hoping to accomplish by that move?
Yeah, well, they've only had three quality outside linebackers really since the summer. They thought they had Marcus Golden back for another year. Marcus decided to retire in early August, so they've kind of been searching for that fourth guy. And, it's interesting. Preston Smith was a starter in Green Bay, but they also had Lucas Van Ness, a first-round pick who was knocking on the door. I think they wanted to give him more snaps. Preston Smith at this stage of his career is probably, more of a sub-package player, rather than a full-time outside linebacker. So, for the Steelers, they'll get him in the rotation. They'll play him 15, 20 snaps a game. They'll give TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, a chance to take a blow once in a while. And I think that'll be good for their rotation. They were looking to find that fourth guy throughout the season. No one ever really stuck. So now it's Preston's job to keep here. And, the Steelers got a guy who's certainly, produced in this league. And I think more importantly, he's always available. I think he only missed one or two games in his entire career.
Ray, what is it that the rest of the league didn't see that the Steelers did see in Highsmith? A smaller school guy that's just been lights out for the Steelers.
Yeah, absolutely. Third-round pick out of Charlotte. Not a big school. There's a couple players in the league from Charlotte, but, they found this guy. They've been really good over the years finding mid-round linebackers, guys who were maybe, defensive ends in college, but they could put, they have the athleticism to stand up and play 3-4 outside linebacker in the NFL. You go back 20, 25 years, Jason Gilden was that type of player at Oklahoma State. Joey Porter was that type of player at Colorado State. So they've always been good in identifying those guys and getting those guys in the middle rounds because they're not coming out as 3-4 backers. They're coming out as kind of like hybrid defensive ends who are tweeners. And, they've done a really good job over the years of identifying those guys and then getting them into their system and teaching them how they want to play.
Joey Porter Jr. is a guy that a lot of Commanders fans were disappointed is not on this team currently. How has he been for the Steelers? Feels like they got a steal there.
Yeah, first pick of the second round last year. So, he's still developing. The one thing about Joey is he always wants the assignment of covering the other team's top receiver. So he's this team's top cornerback. He always wants that assignment. Sometimes he does well when he asks for that. Sometimes, he'll struggle, but he's always up for that challenge. So I think he's a guy who's only going to get better. I think he's only 24 years old. He's going to continue to grow. And, I think he's a guy who down the road is, going to be one of the top corners in the AFC when his time comes.
Going back to the quarterback spot, will they get to a point, do you think, that they're using Fields in different packages, or is he simply the backup now?
Yeah, it's interesting. Mike Tomlin always wants his opponents to think he's got some packages for Justin, but we didn't see it last week or 2 weeks ago against the Giants. They had the off week to game plan a little bit. I think it's always going to be in there, but listen, how can you take Russell Wilson out of the game when he's playing at the level he has for the last two games against the Jets and the Giants? I understand the Jets and the Giants aren't two of the top teams in the NFL, but, Russ was back there looking like 2013, 2014 Russ, the way he was picking those teams apart. So, yeah, there might be a time where you use Justin Fields in goal-to-go situations, take advantage of his legs, maybe short yardage situations. But as long as Russell Wilson's playing at this level, I really don't see them using Justin too much.
Minka Fitzpatrick, I'm curious how he's still playing. He's not old, but he's getting older. Is this the
Yeah,
same guy that we remember from a couple of years ago? How is he doing?
yeah, they really value Minka. His role is going to change here. They just got Cam Sutton back from an 8-game suspension that the NFL handed down. So Cam is probably their most versatile defensive back. So now they could put Cam Sutton in the back end of the secondary. That'll allow Minka to walk up and maybe be more of a playmaker and be involved more at the line of scrimmage than he had been in the first half of the season. Really, in the first half of the season, if you watch the tape, he's back 20, 25 yards every play, being the last line of defense. He's made a few plays here and there, but he hasn't created those turnovers that he was really known for his first couple of seasons with the Steelers. That's why, he got that big contract. I think he's making 17, 18 million a year because he was a turnover machine. Well, just out of happenstance, the way this roster is built, he hasn't been able to return to that form, but it's not because he's lost any athleticism or anything like that. They've just been waiting for Cam Sutton to come back. And now that Sutton is back, I think you're going to see him freed up a little bit more, and they might be able to get some of those turnovers back in his game.
Ray, I always ask our guests on Opposition Wednesday, if Dan Quinn came to you and said, Ray, what's the key to beating the Steelers on Sunday? You'd tell him what?
I think shut down the run. The Commanders have a really good overall team. Roster is good. They're obviously being coached very well right now with Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury. But the one weakness, I think, is probably the run defense. I mean, you tell me, just by looking at the stats, it looks like the Commanders can maybe be run on a little bit. The Steelers have one of the top 10 rushing offenses in the NFL. Najee Harris has had 3 consecutive 100-yard games. And, the Steelers, it was their bread and butter with Justin Fields. Win the time of possession, win the running game, and limit the possessions of your opponents. And I think playing a high-scoring team like the Commanders, yeah, they're going to let Russell Wilson take his shots down the field, but I also think they're going to want to limit the number of times Jaden Daniels touches the ball, and the perfect way to do that is to control the clock and to hand the ball off.
I agree. It's the one place I think the defense is most susceptible this year for the Commanders has been that run defense. Oddly enough, as much as the Commanders are scoring, they are also a team that wants to get after you in the run game. Enter the over-under, according to FanDuel, is right at 45.5. You like the over or the under on this game?
Yeah, I mean, both teams have been scoring the last couple of weeks. So I think with Wilson at quarterback, I kind of like the over in this game. Those guys at Vegas always know more than we do. But the way Daniels is playing and the way Wilson's playing, I think the over might be a good play there.
The Commanders are 3-point favorites at home, which basically means it's a pick 'em. What do you like for the final score on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, I do think this is going to be a higher scoring game. The Steelers took advantage of maybe an easier type of schedule in the first half. It really gets hard in the second half. They got the Ravens twice. They got the Bengals twice. They got the Chiefs. They got the Eagles. And before the season, I don't know if anyone thought the Commanders were going to be one of those teams, but they're certainly one of those teams now. So, I'm going to say the Steelers win in a little bit of an upset on the road. I'm going to go 27 Steelers, Commanders 23.
Ray, we appreciate your time today, man. Have a good one.
All right, Doug. Appreciate you having me on.